All right. Hi, everyone. Good to see those who are joining in. Usually folks trickle in, and we also have a bunch of people who will be watching the recording. So hello to all of those on um, watching this after we finish. Great to see you. We're really excited about this session. I was just telling Bruce, this is our first ever corporate finance event we've done at Leland. So hopefully super beneficial for those who are interested in the career path and learning more. We have an excellent instructor today. Bruce will talk a bit about his background in a moment, but exceptional at what he does, the president of his finance club at his university. So really learning from the best of the best here, and we're happy to have him. If you haven't already, make sure to sign up for Leland. I will go ahead in a moment and drop in the link to sign up. The reason we're pushing sign up so heavily is because you have to be signed up for Leland to access the recording. And so really important to do so. I'll get you that link right now. Here we go. It's in the chat. And then once you sign up, you'll be able to get access to the sign or to the recordings, the free resources, and everything else that we'll give moving forward related to corporate finance and other finance career paths. Bruce, if you don't mind jumping to the next slide, just a quick overview. Next should be good, actually. This is perfect. Today is our last day of finance week. We've had an incredible week filled with tons of sessions. We've had, sessions with 200 plus people on, 100 people watching all over the world. So it's just been super exciting. And our main goal and initiative with Finance Week is to provide as much free value and access as we can to those interested in these career paths. And hopefully it's been a success for all of y'all who have watched in. Again, if this is your first session, welcome, and we hope you get a ton of value out of it. We also have 2 more sessions today, one on the public markets, career sector, as well as wealth and asset management. So make sure to join in if those areas are of interest to you. And with that, we will jump right in on the next slide. Go ahead, Bruce, and introduce yourself, and then I'll do a quick 1 slide on Leland, and then we'll get into our workshop for today.
Yeah, absolutely. So great to meet you all, and hello to anyone watching as well. So I'm Bruce Erickson from Vancouver, Washington. I met Erica and a lot of the team a couple months ago. Learned about the platform, was very interested in it myself, and at the same time, they asked if I would be a coach here. So what I focus on, and what I've pursued personally, is a career in corporate finance. And so at BYU, just like Erica mentioned, working with the BYU finance side to help, I don't know, maybe 2, 4, I don't know, hundreds of students kind of figure out what they want to do. And, once they have that company in mind, to really like, how can I now get in? How can I break into this area of finance that I want to pursue? So for myself, it was kind of a journey of discovery of what I wanted to do, and began kind of in a finance role, kind of building out all the financial models that we had for a personal care company, publicly traded, and then it was at Brex and more of an operations role as an analyst, and then more recently working at Microsoft, and be working at a tech startup here in Lehigh, Utah, and then I'll continue my career at Microsoft for a few more years. But I think it's an amazing space with some of the most amazing people I've met, and mentorship, and so happy to share any tips or advice that I can on if these are some of your goal companies or career paths. I want to be a help however I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. And Bruce obviously didn't brag about himself, but he also landed offers at Amazon, Tesla, Dell, Nike, Disney, etc. So as you can see, super qualified to be teaching about the world of corporate finance, and we're honored to have him here. Bruce, if you go to the 2 slides ahead, we'll just do a quick Leland overview. Again, for those of you who are new, hopefully this isn't your first, but or last. We are a coaching platform. We help people reach ambitious goals across prestigious career paths as well as educational pursuits. So you come onto our platform, you let us know your goal, if that's getting into a top grad school program, if that's breaking into corporate finance, if it's, getting into a private equity role, or even something like tech, product management, dental school, law school, literally anything that you'd like to do, we are here to help. And we have coaching, classes, as well as a ton of content to help you get there. So that's why we're hosting this week. It's really important for us to have community initiatives and opportunities for each of you to connect with our coaches, like Bruce himself, as well as get familiar with the type of community and content that we're building here at Leland. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Bruce, to go through your material for today.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Erica. So yeah, I'm happy to. So I'll go through a few slides and content, especially focus on what can hopefully give each one of you an edge and advantage into breaking into this space and these companies specifically. If there are questions, please feel free to throw it in the chat or raise your hand. If I miss it, just call it out and so we can answer your question. So one of the kind of key notes that I want to make as we jump into like what is corporate finance and why do it is, the process of application, to be honest, is not super difficult. Like submitting the application, and if you think of some of these companies like Disney or Nike, you know that they will ask you something like, oh, why would you want to work there? Why would you want to pursue a career in corporate finance? And to be honest, it's not hard to come up with a quick answer to that. And so I want to delve into more of the details of certain programs of why you'd want to do it, because where I've seen success personally and where I've seen other people succeed is that some of these easy questions, easy processes, some people often interpret that as, doesn't require much preparation. But however, with, thousands of applications, it's important that we have like super solid answers to, why is this what I want to pursue? What is it exactly that I am pursuing? And a few other key tricks. So I'm sure you guys, I hope that you've been able to attend some of the past events. A common question in almost every interview is, why do you want to do this? And again, going back to that point of having a better than just surface level answer is key. And so some of my thoughts of how I interpret corporate finance and what it is like every area of finance, you have a set amount of scarce resources that you're trying to allocate for the best return for the company and for the shareholders. Oftentimes with these companies, it's maybe people or employees that they have a set amount of headcount that they need to allocate to certain projects. They have a set amount of funds, whether it's cash in the bank or funding from VC firms or private equity firms. And your role is, how can we use these scarce resources to allocate it in the best way to support our mission and increase wealth for our shareholders. And understanding that distinction of how it's similar to other areas of finance, but also how it's different, is super key. And again, the more senior that we become in these roles, the more you're asking more questions, like we see on the right of, hey, how are we balancing these decisions of funding using debt versus equity? So wanted to touch on this very quickly, that understanding what it is that we're applying to is key. And even though like, hey, why do you want to do this is a basic question, having a more in-depth of, how is this actually different from other roles in finance is key. So I'd love to hear your guys' advice and kind of talk about this. So if we think of Tesla, it was a company that I thought about as, very well regarded. They're making huge business decisions every day of, should we invest in this new model of car? Or, hey, we just had 200,000 vehicles recalled. And what is the impact of that on the financial team at Tesla? So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let's say 1 year ago, which this is a true story, Tesla recalled almost, I think it was 200,000 other vehicles. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you think the corporate finance team was involved when Tesla had to recall these hundreds of thousands of vehicles? Feel free to throw it in the chat or unmute. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts of how the corporate finance team was involved here. If you guys don't have any thoughts, it's totally okay. I'm happy to walk through it. But any ideas of maybe how they could be involved? Like, hundreds of thousands of vehicles recalled, obviously a lot of expenses involved and repercussions. What do you guys think? see, let me check the chat right now. See a couple coming through. Yeah, someone said, determine the cost of the fixed like determine the cost to fix the cars and also the cost of any legal repercussions. So yeah, that's key. I see, the liquidity. Do they have enough liquidity to fix everything? Totally accurate as well. So one reason why I want to do this and why it's a key exercise is when you're applying to these companies, it's easy to think, oh, the way that the corporate finance team operates is the same, but in reality, it's very different from company to company, and it's very dependent on their business model. So as you're thinking, I'll be applying to Tesla, I'll be applying to Disney, have this, kind of exercise or thought process of, hey, Disney just announced this new acquisition. How is the corporate finance team involved? Tesla just did this, Nike did this. How is the corporate finance team involved? Because when it comes to the interviews, you will be able to stand out as an applicant if you have a much deeper understanding of what you will actually be doing. Because they'll get thousands of applicants, hundreds of people interviewing, and the candidate that understands this is what I will actually be doing, and because I know I am more confident that I'm a good fit, is a huge way you can stand out. So placement within corporate finance is almost any place that you can think. I threw a few of the more larger companies on here. If you notice, I also threw the Leland symbol up here as well, because in reality, any corporation, any business will have a finance team and will need the skill set that you can bring as a corporate financial analyst. A common role is financial planning, but at some of these big companies, that can also include cash management, the treasury team. And so just like I mentioned on that previous slide, once you have these companies in mind, taking a deeper dive of what would I actually be doing, talking with people, what does your actual day-to-day look like? What are some of your projects? Because in reality, based on industry and company and leadership style, it will differ significantly company to company. And a great way to do that is, reading and listening to earnings releases and 10Ks, and how are they thinking about these issues. Personally, as I was preparing for a lot of these interviews and applications, I love listening to the earnings calls, if they're public, and if they're not public, maybe it's podcasts or news releases of how are they thinking about these issues, and then coming into the interview showing you've done your research and showing I know how you guys kind of tackle these problems. I know that that's a good fit for me, and I know that because of that, I can add value in this way. So one thing I'll say is, why, like I mentioned this at the beginning, why do you want to do this? Why are you applying to a role at Microsoft? Like that's such a common question. And it's very easy to come up with an answer. Like, oh, it's a great company. So something I want to emphasize is, these simple questions of, let's say it's Microsoft, why Microsoft, why finance, why these things, doing as much as you can to make these answers perfect is super important, because in reality, that's one of the best ways you can stand out is everyone will have an answer. It's not about whether you can answer the questions or not. It's how good and in tune with the company and the mission of the company are your answers. So, two things I want to mention about that is not as an answer to a question, but just for context. As far as starting compensation for financial analysts, let's say out of college, typically I've seen around 90 to 120,000, some below, some above. Again, this is just more for your context rather than the answer to a question. Another thing of, hey, is this something that you really want to pursue? And potential answer to this question is, the balance that some of these companies will be able to provide. And that is that, many of these companies like, Google and several others, they will require less hours each week. And that's not because they don't think, oh, like, hey, they aren't able to work 80 hours. It's because they truly believe that the employee is better, more productive, more efficient if they are well balanced in every area of their life. And that's something that, I've come to understand working at a lot of these companies is, they know you're capable of working the 80 hours, working 100 or more. And some of these executives sometimes have to do that. But what they're trying to emphasize is the reason we have all these programs and we want to have balance is you are a better employee, more productive if you can have stability in your life, have balance, and so expressing that of uh, how the not only the work but the lifestyle will help you to add value to their company is immense. And part of the interviews as well is they're not just looking for people that when they're looking for leaders and contributors to their company, it's not just someone that can get down and have perfect assumptions in the financial model. It's, is this someone who's a balanced candidate that is great at communication, that is great at leadership, that has shown that they can lead and create teams that can operate well, and someone that they genuinely want to work with. I've seen that so clearly in interviews where one of them will likely be focused, is this a good culture fit? So being prepared for that, not just technicals in the interview, but is the culture and lifestyle of the company a good fit for me? And I'm sure each of you know this, that the culture differs actually significantly even within corporate finance. If you go to Amazon, Google, Disney, Nike, each of these will have very distinct cultures. And just like the other questions, the more prepared you are of the style of culture that is, the better off you will be in showing why you're a good fit. Let's see. And I'll just, let me actually go back. Are there any questions that you guys have? Again, feel free to throw it in the chat or unmute.
Someone DM'd me personally, Bruce, I just sent it your way, but they said, when you were asked the why corporate finance when you were interviewing for Microsoft, what was it that you said?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they asked me that almost in two different questions. They asked me, why. So I was applying to the financial rotational program, and so they asked me, why that program, and then why Microsoft, which I believe overlap to answer that question. And so to that first point of when they asked me, why are you applying to a financial role at Microsoft? There are surface level things that I made sure to hit on, which is the reputation of the program, the colleagues that I can interact with. But then what I feel like really set me apart in why corporate finance at Microsoft was I was able to give more specific detail. Like, hey, not only is this a great program, but I've talked to the last two program managers, and I know that actually last week was the 20-year anniversary or birthday of the program, and to have such a tenured program as related to other companies where they're on their only fifth or sixth year gives me greater confidence that this is a program that will help me grow. And so I would say the answers that we can all give of it's a good company and good people and good program, the more like specific details we can give, which I tried to do, of specific facts, specific details, specific people we talked to, specific experiences of I was able to shadow someone and see what they did day to day. It helps you just stand out so much. There's another question: how accounting heavy is the day to day? So I'll actually refer to this slide briefly to answer that, then I'll continue to expound. To be honest, it's really dependent on the type of role that you want to pick. At these huge companies, corporate finance does not always equal FP&A. Corporate finance could equal, finance strategy, which is what I did at Microsoft. I was doing financial strategy for them. It could be on the treasury team. It could be on more of the operations side. It could be on the international finance world. So what I've seen very clearly is bigger companies, you will be able to specialize more. And so if you want to be very accounting heavy, they will have financial roles that work with the accounting team, or even accounting roles. However, if you don't want to do it, these companies are robust enough that you don't have to do it. In fact, you can dedicate your career at some of the biggest and best companies towards more of like the M&A role. Because if you think of companies like AT&T and Disney, like their M&A team is one of the best and one of the most robust. They're doing so many acquisitions. Microsoft just acquired Activision Blizzard, a $70 billion deal. So you can really direct your career where you'd like it to go. Let's see. I see another question here. Do you think it's better to work as a corporate finance analyst in manufacturing, trading companies like Amazon, Mercedes, or advisory companies like Deloitte and PwC? That's a great question. I will not say which one is better. I can give you my advice that advisory companies like Deloitte and PwC will give you a broader skill set, in my opinion, because they are touching so many different industries. And so if you're hoping to stay, more broad, you don't want to specialize yet, you want to have more doors open, maybe lean towards the advisory companies because they are, helping to advise people in any sort of industry. Whereas as you start to specialize in something like, at a place like Amazon, it has the reputation to allow you to continue to jump. But the more you specialize, the more, they see you as an expert in that field. Okay, one other question. What's the difference between FP&A and finance strategy? That's a great question. So I'll kind of answer that as I lean into this slide here. So FP&A, I'm sure you all, financial planning and analysis, that is more like building out the model and assumptions to support the budget and forecast of the company, of just, strictly numbers. What do you think we will earn and expense in the coming years? How will our business change and adapt as the macro economy changes? And so, part of that is strategic. Part of that is, how am I backing up these assumptions? How is that going to change, the future of the company? What I was doing and what I would define as more finance strategy is, it's less tied to a P&L. You're not tied down to I'm in charge of this line item on a profit and loss statement, or I'm in charge of these few line items. It's more, what is our business model and how does that need to change in the future? So, for example, at Microsoft, there were many of my colleagues doing FP&A, and that was, they were in charge of the Halo line item. How's the Halo business going to be? The revenue that we would expect on consumer products, on top line game revenue, and what are the expenses that we could expect? Whereas finance strategy was, hey, we see from our competitors that they're leaning more into mobile games, so we should shift Halo onto a mobile platform. And so that's what I would say. FP&A is more tied to line items in a P&L, whereas finance strategy is, the blank canvas. What can we be doing better? Which, some people like, some people don't like. I personally loved it, but it's less, rhythm of business type work that you would expect in an FP&A role. Awesome. Well, let me jump into, rotational programs, and then please ask any other questions that you have. So whether it's coming out of undergrad, you can, something that will set you apart is being able to participate in rotational programs. Often this is their pipeline into financial leadership, is you can, touch on so many areas of business. Within typically 2 years, it's, 6 months in each role. Then after the end of the 2 years, you can land a more permanent role at the company. And so, here's some examples here on the left, where FP&A is a common but not the only role you can have in corporate finance, where, especially at big companies, you can be touching almost every part of the business. And for someone that's, a few years past undergrad, and maybe a rotational program is not, in the wheel of possibility, there are still programs that I would suggest that you look into at some of these companies where you can do like a 2 to 5 week exchange almost on a different team to get experience. And so when they're looking for people to be in leadership roles, they are looking for people that have a broad skill set and broad understanding of how does this company operate, work together, and succeed. And so again, playing into how to break into corporate finance is a deeper understanding of what roles are available, what you'd actually be doing in those roles, and where you want it to take you. Whether like on the right, we see, do you want to end up as a CEO, CFO? Do you want to start your own company? Do you want to just go to a smaller startup? Do you want to go to grad school and pivot out? These are questions and answers that, I would say are so critical in the application and the interview process of what will I actually be doing? What roles are actually available? And the more you can understand that, the better off you'll be. Because I think you'd often be surprised. People just come in and you're a great you're a great company, everyone knows your name, and but the actual specifics of the program, people often lack. Question here to clarify: are rotational programs available for recent grads, as in just graduated a few months ago? That's a great question. Yes, they are targeting graduates, like recent college grads. If you already graduated, then you can still apply. A good friend of mine at Microsoft, she worked for a year at Goldman Sachs and then started the rotational program. So, they're looking for someone kind of at the beginning of their career, but that doesn't, you could also work before you start. So hopefully that answers that question. It's definitely still apply. Don't feel like if you didn't get in after college, you are out. You can still apply. They will often welcome that variety of experience. So awesome. Okay, well, I wanted to touch on a few more specific pieces of advice that I have as far as the networking process, the resume process, the interview process. Again, I hope a point that you guys take away from this is a lot of the steps that you will do to apply, a lot of the questions you will receive. It will not be hard to do them or to create an answer. Where you can stand out is going the extra mile to have more in-depth examples and more in-depth involvement than other candidates. So let me just start with networking really quick. It's obviously very key, whatever company you want to pursue, whatever career area you want to pursue, to network with people. My piece of advice is, as you're doing this, think of people kind of in two buckets. Is this someone that I can network with and ask the dumb questions and with no repercussions and get just genuine feedback? Or am I networking with this person and they're in a key role, like a key decision-making role, a recruiter, often a first-year analyst or intern whose feedback influences the decision process? The reason I would distinguish those is, as you're learning more, don't go directly to those in the key decision-making roles. And the reason is, if the recruiter's only interaction with you is as you're first learning about the company and you clearly haven't done your research already, you don't really know the details, you're just kind of calling to learn, unfortunately, that's kind of the first impression they have of you. Whereas if you network with a lot of people, you prepare, and then you start to reach out to the people in the key decision-making roles, once you're more prepared, that will make a significant difference. That their first impression of you is to ask genuine questions, but it's already clear that you know what you're talking about. That you know what you're doing. I remember this for myself when I was talking to executives and recruiters at Google and Disney. It was so helpful to go into those calls already knowing a lot about the programs specifically, knowing a lot about the roles I was applying to. And it's almost like an informal interview. Whereas I came in with genuine questions, but I also came in wanting to show my strengths, wanting to show that I had already done my research. And although this was just an informal networking call, they were more willing to vouch for me, to push applications through, to recommend me, because they could see you're already prepared. So that'd be that piece of advice. Prepare as much as you can before talking to key decision makers. Next, resume. I can't emphasize enough, again, understanding the program you're applying to and showing your impact on the resume and relevant experience to the work you'll be doing. So just one other example with Microsoft, they have their finance rotation program. But through research, I was able to find out that 2 years ago, they merged their operations program with their corporate financial team. And so now, the finance rotation program has, one of their program managers is over operations. And so, without research, without knowing, like it'd be difficult to find that. So as I submitted my resume, I made sure to highlight that I had financial modeling experience, but also operations experience. And I feel like that really helped me. People often ask, oh, is there like a certain word I need to include? No, there really isn't. Like, there's not one word that you do or don't include that will make the differences. Are you showing genuine impact of where you're working? And does your resume clearly reflect the type of program or role that you're applying to? So that's why I'd say, again, it's very easy for people to apply, but be the applicant that does more research to find out the details of what you'll be doing, the details of the program, so that your application matches that as close as possible. Someone asked the question, is there any FP&A certificate that would be helpful for a resume? I'm sure there is. Personally, I did not get any like certificates. So I would say, actual experience in a corporate finance role or an FP&A role would be the preference. Like, hey, I was actually in this role. If you can't, then I would absolutely pursue FP&A certificates. I would just find those on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn learnings. You can often get many of those certificates. But yeah, like I said, if you can get actual experience in those roles, that'd be great. Even if you can't, another alternative to a certificate is you can shadow someone. Like, hey, I'm interested in your role. I love to shadow you for a couple days and see what you do. So either of those are great. Personally, I don't know of any certificates, but I know that they exist. Potential sources of that are LinkedIn Learning, and that can definitely be helpful. One note I'll actually make about that is it's very possible to pivot into corporate finance even without a lot of financial background. One example is one of my coworkers at Microsoft. She was doing, her major was not anything business related. Many of her internships were not necessarily finance related, and so in her interviews they were almost all technical because they didn't see that on the resume, so they want to confirm that. So whatever you can do through certificates, shadowing people, actual experience, you will definitely be asked about it. So I think that is a great way to get experience. The last point I'll touch on is interviews, and I've touched on this already, but I would just say take any question they give you very seriously, even if it's an easy question. I'll give you one specific example is they will ask questions like, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And it's not hard to come up with, an answer to that. Like, oh, my strengths are time management. My weaknesses are whatever, whatever it may be. So the way that you can differentiate is taking these, what appear to be softball questions, and give much more specific, precise, structured answers. So instead of saying, "Oh, my strength is time management," and that's about it. Come at it with structure. If you've heard of the PAR story, problem, action, resolution, or STAR story, explain in detail. Even though they didn't ask, this is my strength. This is where I was able to encounter a difficulty. How I was able to resolve that difficulty. Which demonstrated my leadership qualities and my knowledge of financial modeling. Because contrary to many other types of finance, it's not, oh, did you get this question right or wrong? You can probably come up with an answer to every question. It's how are you taking the initiative with each of these questions to knock it out of the park, to show that you did research and you're answering questions that they didn't even ask. Another example with one of the Microsoft interviews, it was really just a conversation. There was, very little, technical questions, specific questions. It was a lot of, oh, how do you like this role? How do you like this job? What were some of the things you did? And then being able to take the initiative to take that question and showcase your skills and abilities that they may not even directly be asking about. So I can't speak highly enough about taking every opportunity to showcase your skill sets in the interviews and any phase of the interviews. Oftentimes it's a phone screening at the beginning, a 30-minute phone call with a recruiter, and then often a super day. More and more of these companies are doing them over Zoom. So that's very typical. And again, just taking every opportunity you have on even what maybe appear to be softball questions to just absolutely knock them out of the park with clear structure, clear examples of your skill set, clear examples of how you did research on the company, research on the leadership style, to stand out as a candidate. Well, that's a lot of the key points that I want to share. I'd love to open it back up to any questions you guys have. Let's see if let's see. I think we have a question slide, but I'll go back. Are there any questions that you guys have about specific companies that you're hoping to network with, or anything else of breaking into corporate finance? Yeah. I hope you guys will keep thinking about it. One note that I'd actually love to make, kind of connected with each of these, is another way to a great way to stand out in this process as part of doing research is many of these companies have such well-known brands and logos that there are often books associated with their leadership, books associated with the leadership style. So I would absolutely do research in that. I can't speak highly enough of reading Satya Nadella's book, hit refresh, and then quoting that book and the impact that made of speaking to his leadership style and work ethic. And then just to wrap up, I'll answer these couple questions. Let's see, what are most sought technical skills in the area of corporate finance? That's a great question. Again, it will be dependent on which software type each of these companies are using. I mean, the biggest skill sets are how can you correctly manipulate and interpret financial data or non-financial data. I would say that is a skill set I would definitely develop and practice, whether that's interpreting data through SQL and data queries there. Bringing in Excel is obviously a key skill that you need to have, and building out financial models and assumptions. And then being able to interpret data is a skill set I would absolutely recommend. Is we have these different financial metrics and ratios, but what does that actually mean? What opportunities, strengths does that show? So that's what I would say. Being able to pull data through whatever coding language or Excel add-in that you're using, and then how to interpret and model that data in clear ways. Another one, can you touch on how different financial analyst roles at different companies you've worked at have differed in the day-to-day work routines? Yeah, absolutely. So I can touch on, again, Microsoft. It was less of a what they would call rhythm of business type role. It was much more strategy focused. So day-to-day was really determined by myself, and hey, I have this goal of doing competitor research, competitor analysis, but my day-to-day was really kind of determined by my manager and I of, what's the best way to solve that? Kind of a black box of ambiguity. Whereas at Brex was, more finance operations. There were much more set things I was doing every day. We're getting these wire payments, these checks, these, ACH payments every day, and there are certain things we need to do to process them. So that was much more structured. So I would say, that's something I would do research in. Do I want my role to be much more structured or, open to interpretation? And then, but in each one of those roles, you have significant leeway to show impact and show proactivity in what you're doing. But of course, in each one of those, the similar things were communicating clearly with my manager, clearly communicating, the impact of my work and, the vision we have for whatever that project was. Last question, then I'll probably turn it back to you, Erica. Which companies are great in corporate finance? I mentioned AT&T and Microsoft. So to make sure I understand your question correctly, are you asking which one is the most reputable to work towards or work for? Okay, awesome. That is a great question. My personal bias is of course towards tech. I think, the demands of, the rest of the world will determine which companies continue to grow. And so clearly we're seeing a huge interest in AI. That's why NVIDIA is growing like crazy, their market share, Microsoft and Google with things like Bard and ChatGPT. So, when in doubt, I would say, how is the rest of the economy and industries transitioning? A few years ago, that was to the cloud business. Now it's kind of to the AI business. So that's kind of what led my personal preference of how is the general demand changing and shifting. One thing I'll say though is there are so many industries like the automotive industry, the airline industry that will continue, that are staples in what they do. Personally, I would again read some of these books by the co-founders and what are their core values. Talk to people at the companies to see their job satisfaction, and I'd say there's no short list of good companies. There are amazing companies. I would say what work style is best for you. Like Amazon, I'll give another example. They are a great company. However, they have a much different leadership style of making quick decisions and working you a little bit harder and longer than the typical corporate finance. And so that may be a great fit for you, whereas it may be a poor fit for someone else. So yeah, I would say, just to summarize again, wherever the general demands of the market are shifting, that's where I would go. And then wherever you can make the most impact while you connect with your manager from a cultural perspective. I see a couple more questions. Erica, do we have time to continue?
Yeah, feel free to do one or two more.
Okay, I'll just do one last question, then I'll turn it back. Let's see. If you have time to answer this, were there DCF, LBO, M&A modeling commonly used in your financial analyst roles? That's a great question. LBO, no. If you're on the M&A team, it will be more common. Just day-to-day, strategy type roles, you're not needing to do leverage buyout models. DCF, yes, much more common. M&A models, again, it's if you're on the M&A team within these companies. So if you think of Disney as huge M&A team, they're the ones that, yes, on a super common basis will be doing this. Myself on the Xbox team, I was not on the M&A team. I was not doing those. Knowing how to do them, great, and there are a lot of financial models you can use to stand out, but I'd say it's very dependent on the silo teams that you're working with.
Awesome. Right. Thanks so much, Bruce. Huge round of applause to him. If you want to hype him up in the chat, this has been excellent. I feel like everyone here should feel super grateful for the tactical advice that was provided. So thanks, Bruce. He does have a package specifically to breaking into a big tech finance role. So a lot of what we talked about today, you can work with him. Each of our coaches have the opportunity for you to schedule a 15-minute free intro call with them. So if you want to get talking to Bruce to see like how you could potentially work together, I definitely recommend setting up that time with him. You can scan the QR code. He's also offering a 10% off code. So use that to your advantage, even if it's setting up a single session to, get help with a specific networking strategy or anything as intense as, the end-to-end service. He can help you along the way. So huge thank you, Bruce. We'll make sure after this call to send out the link to your profile, and hope everyone had an enjoyable experience. And on the next slide, you'll see that we have several other sessions. So make sure to sign up for them. And with that, we will end today. Thanks so much, everyone. Right there. Yep, this is perfect.
All right, there we go.
Have a great one, everyone. Take care.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you.